There's just something about big, sweaty men killing ugly aliens with chainsaws that just makes me proud to be a human. Today we're going to be talking about the biggest, toughest, and most manly men to ever man, and all the war crimes they committed along the way, including those they committed against their own people. Let's get started by talking about the Coalition of Ordered Governments from the Gears of War universe. The world of Sera is a brutal planet of intense climates, few sustainable resources, and where to survive is to struggle, and to thrive is to conquer. All of the bioforms of Sera all share an innate proficiency for violence and conflict, as the planet's strong gravitational forces cause all of the life on the planet to become bigger and stronger than they might have been on Earth. Possessing much larger skeletal frames and denser muscle structure, the creatures of Sera have all spent the entirety of the planet's life cycle in a constant state of warfare. And the most warlike of all the creatures on Sera was none other than us, the humans. It's honestly hilarious how much of a trope it is that humans are the most warlike of all the species in the universe, but looking at real-world human history, it's hard not to see why this trope exists. The interesting thing about the people of Sera is they don't record time normally. Instead, the people of Sera actually date their periods of time in terms of ages, with each age being given a general theme based on what was expected to occur over the course of that age. So for example, the first and earliest period in human history on the world of Sera is the Age of Armageddon, a 1,000-year period of unrelenting war and conflict, wherein the only thing that pushed technological advancement was warfare. To clarify, the primitive tribes of Sera went from fighting with sticks and stones to modern-day firearms and tanks in only 1,000 years. Meanwhile, real-world humanity was only just starting to get their hands on gunpowder technology, and these are 11th century firearms, so you just shoot a big rock once, and you need 4 guys working together just to reload it. You can kind of see how these two things aren't comparable, technologically speaking. Now, part of this might have been because the intense gravity gave the humans of Sera better quality ores to work with, and the higher amounts of tectonic activity leading to faster refinement of metals. But honestly, I don't think Epic Games care too much. Oh, you didn't know the company that makes that stupid shooter game also makes the game you love from your childhood? And given the age rating of my audience, I think it's pretty safe to say that a lot of you have opinions on Fortnite. But I'm sure you guys can tell me all about that in the comments section below. Back to the lore. While war was a major part of human culture and society, peace wasn't just a possibility, but it was actually something that was briefly achieved. You see, buried deep under Sera's surface was a material known as emulsion. While a plentiful resource, emulsion seemingly had no value or beneficial qualities. Instead, only served to actually poison and mutate those who were exposed to it. That was until a scientist on Sera discovered that emulsion could be used as a highly efficient and renewable source of energy. And almost overnight, wars and petty conflicts of the human nations came to an end, as emulsion became the primary fuel source for the entire world. Or at least it could have been. While plentiful, emulsion was not evenly distributed across the world, as nations whose territorial borders contained massive deposits of emulsion quickly exploded technologically and society. Those without it would quickly collapse into anarchy and chaos. Named the Age of Silence, this period would be a period of peace and progress. Though the fact that the people of Sera call this period of peace the Age of Silence should really speak to how they view peace overall. Part of the reason for this belief isn't ill-founded, however. As the nation-states of Sera developed and progressed technologically, a philosopher belonging to one of these nation-states argued that the excess of wealth and unending peace would eventually see to the death of traditional values and beliefs. While neither this philosopher nor his views would do much to affect change in his day and age, his viewpoint would actually eventually take root in the future long after his death. Preaching important values such as honor, humility, courage, and many other attributes highly respected in a militaristic and meritocratic society, his viewpoints quickly escalated, becoming the predominant viewpoint that would encapsulate the entire world. Later being known as the Octus Canon, this would become the main driving force for the conquest of the entire world, as multiple governmental forces across the planet began uniting under this political belief, and began amassing massive amounts of wealth and military power in order to secure control over the world. This would begin the Pendulum Wars and end the Age of Silence, an 80-year-long period where the entire planet would be engulfed in war and see the death of millions. It would be during the Pendulum Wars that the Coalition of Ordered Governments would begin putting into work the development of their mass infantry unit, known as the Gears. Highly skilled Gears infantry units would prove highly efficient in their battles in the Pendulum Wars. However, even in spite of this, the COG would continue to push biological development in hopes of creating even greater and more efficient soldiers to fight in the Pendulum Wars. This would begin their experiments with emulsion and biological technology, initially claiming it to be the result of simply trying to cure rust lung and trying to improve health conditions all across the world. This was actually all a lie, all intended to improve the genetic compatibility of soldiers and make them even more effective at taking part in war. Unfortunately, despite the revolutionary and remarkable feats in genetic engineering conducted during the Pendulum Wars, these superhuman soldiers would never end up seeing the light of day, but they would see the dark of the underground. As a result of these failures in genetic engineering, the COG would be unable to deploy these superhuman soldiers to the front lines and secure victory in the Pendulum Wars. As a result, they'd be forced to depend on the Gears, who themselves would end up securing major victories and eventually secure total victory over the world and crush the enemies of the COG. Unfortunately for the COG, however, they wouldn't be able to celebrate their victory for very long, as no more than 6 weeks after their victory, the greatest threat to humanity would strike, the Locust Horde, striking when humanity had just begun to demilitarize and return home after generations of endless warfare. In a matter of days, more than 25% of the entire human race was wiped out, and the Locust War had officially begun. This is where the COG military would truly be tested, and humanity would be pushed to its limit, as all manner of tactics and methods were used in order to secure the safety of the human race, including the en masse conscription of every able-bodied male and the imprisonment of every single female capable of conceiving children.
Are we the baddies?
All in an effort to force as many soldiers to front lines as possible and prioritize the selective breeding of the most experienced and veteran COG soldiers. This was meant to ensure that every child born during this period and through these means would be physically larger and stronger, even among the already strong and large Saren humans. A practice that wouldn't even get them anywhere, as most of these children wouldn't even be old enough to reach the front lines before the war even started to come to an end. To make matters worse, on top of these cruel conditions, the COG also practiced genetic enhancement onto some of their most skilled soldiers. We can see this with Marcus Phoenix, who, during the Pendulum Wars, appeared to be a fairly standard-looking soldier, lean, resilient, and fairly comparable to a regular man in our modern-day military. To how he appears during the Locust War, as he seems to stand a whole head taller than the average soldier and is built like a brick shithouse. Now, while it is never outright confirmed that the COG soldiers are actually genetically modified, we can heavily see the implications given the Locusts themselves are themselves genetically modified, and there is no other reason why Marcus Phoenix and the other members of the Gears seem to grow so large in such a short period of time, despite them all being full-grown adults at the time of the Locust War. And so, even though it is never outright stated, I think that this alone proves that the COG soldiers are genetically augmented, with the prevailing theory being that it is those that are the most experienced and who prove themselves worthy that are given these genetic augmentations. And so with that out of the way, I think we've covered the origins and story of the COG soldiers, and we can begin by talking about their weapons and armor. The standard issue weapon of the COG soldiers, the Lancer Mark II is a fast-firing, low-recoil firearm equipped with an underslung chainsaw bayonet, which is one of the only weapons capable of actually piercing the Locust Horde's reinforced hide. In addition to the Lancer Mark II, every single COG soldier is also equipped with a sidearm and combat shotgun, though typically the shotgun is the only thing capable of actually doing damage to this Locust Horde, with the sidearm being more of a backup, oh shit weapon. Now, because of this, you would assume that the individual COG soldier isn't that effective at dealing with the Locust one-on-one, and you'd be correct, as the average Locust soldier is both faster and stronger than the average human, and as a result, this makes dealing with massive hordes of the Locust very, very difficult, except with the most skilled and enhanced soldiers. That being said though, there is one weapon in the COG's arsenal that is extremely effective at dealing with en masse Locust hordes, and that weapon is the Hammer of Dawn, baby. The Hammer of Dawn is the last Hail Mary weapon of the COG. Positioned in low orbit, this satellite is able to unleash apocalyptic levels of destruction onto the surface, killing both allies and enemies alike. Now, while the death of allies would be an acceptable loss in order to secure victory against the Locust, the Hammer of Dawn does require an insane amount of precision and coordination in order to secure these shots, and as a result, without the proper coordination and field of view, the Hammer of Dawn will be more of a liability than an actual asset in war. And as a result, it is used very sparingly by the COG in order to secure victory. I am hesitant to bring up the COG armor, given the fact that it seems fairly equivalent to our modern day armor, just with a sleeveless option. I think I'm going to skip over the armor and just go straight into their methods of war. Making extensive use of infantry units, the Gears of the COG military don't seem to possess anything outside of the ordinary when it comes to military units, and it seems relatively comparable to our modern day military. That being said though, one unique characteristic of the COG is that they make use of extensive and highly skilled kill teams of veteran and experienced COG soldiers. And so with that, we can actually begin by finding out our goals for this homebrew. First and foremost, given the fact that planet Sarah has such a strong emphasis and influence on the culture of the COG, we're going to need a planet just like that. A brutal and harsh death world that emphasizes warfare and conquest. For our second goal, we're going to have to be an army of superhumanly strong soldiers who grow up in a society that is heavily indoctrinated and militaristic. And for our third and final goal, we're going to need our own Hammer of Dawn, something capable of delivering apocalyptic levels of destruction, all from orbit. This should fit pretty well in 40k, honestly. Alright, so looking at our 3 goals, we're going to have to look through our 3 major factions to see which one of these 3 best fits our goals and how we can use that to make our own homebrew. So, looking at our 3 major factions, we're going to have to go through these and see which one best fits. However, I'm going to save you guys the time of skipping ahead and just tell you right now, we're going to be going with the Imperium of Man. Shocker, I know. The human faction of super soldiers is going to involve using a human faction for 40k. Who knew? That being said, though, just because we know which major faction we're going with, that doesn't mean that we're completely done, since we have to go through our major sub-factions and see which one best fits our goals. So, let's go through our sub-factions and see which one best fits. For our first option, I chose the Imperial Guard, given the fact that the COG soldiers aren't too dissimilar from the Imperial Guard that we see in 40k, and to the fact that they are both Imperial soldiers who grew up in a hostile world, and the Imperial Guard has a tendency to recruit from Death Worlds as well. Just look at Krieg and the Katachan Jungle Fighters for an example. For our second option, I chose the Space Marines, given the clear similarities between the COG soldiers and the Adeptus Astartes, though there isn't much more to go on besides the fact that the Space Marines do have a tendency to use Exterminatus, and that would be the closest thing to the Hammer of Dawn that we have in 40k. For a third option, I chose the Adeptus Sororitas, otherwise known as the Sisters of Battle, and I know, that sounds a little out of left field given the fact that all the time we see the COG, they're big muscular men who tend to fight in small groups, and the Adeptus Sororitas are not at all like that. However, that being said, there are groups of warrior women that we do see fighting against locusts in the Gears of War universe. Given the fact that a lot of these warrior women groups are survivors of incredibly harsh and brutal conditions, I think this actually does fit to a degree with the martyr sacrifice theme that Sisters of Battle do have going on. Alright, out of these 3 sub-factions, let's get started in picking up which one we're going to use for this homebrew. While I'm assuming a lot of you are going to assume that I'm going to pick Space Marines for this one, I'm actually not going to. I don't think the Space Marines do fit the COG in this instance, given the fact that the Space Marines are known to be one-man armies who could take on thousands of enemies at one time. I don't think the Gear soldiers are that extent. While they are super strong and super efficient in combat, they are not Space Marine level. So, bye-bye Adeptus Astartes, we can be using you for this homebrew. So you're probably thinking that I'm going to be choosing the Imperial Guard for this homebrew, and you're right, and also wrong, because this is the first time in the Everprince's history that we're going to be actually using 2 factions for this homebrew. That's right, the Sisters of Battle are also involved in this. So get your wallets out, because GW is going to be making money off this video. Or at least I think they will. How many of you guys actually buy the boxes that I recommend when I make these videos? Feel free to let me know in the comments section below. I'm kind of interested, just out of morbid curiosity. At any rate, though, we can officially begin writing this homebrew, and I'm very excited for what we got going on here, because I definitely know for a fact that I want the Hammer of Dawn to be a part of the Emperor's will when it comes to Adeptus Sororitas. So, let's begin. Over the last 1,000 years, the planet Serra has been engaged in a brutal civil war for control over the planet. On one side, you have the Octus Canon, a powerful religious organization that is devoted to the Emperor's will, and on the other, the Successionists, who want to separate from the Imperium and turn against the Emperor's way. Luckily for the people of this world, the Octus Canon would quickly take power and ensure the strength and devotion of its soldiers were guaranteed, ensuring the creation of some of the most skilled and venerated soldiers the Imperium would see to date. Unfortunately, in their desperation, the Successionists would turn to genetic material and even Xenos technology in order to improve themselves and survive in this war zone, going on to actually modify their own DNA, going on to modify themselves with DNA from the Tyranid hive mind, and unintentionally turn themselves into brutal and powerful gene stealers. As the war between the Serran Guard and the Cult of the Locust would continue on over the course of the next several years, it would actually lead to the induction and creation of an entirely new Order of the Sisters of Battle, the Order of the Grievous Heart. Founded from the women who had lost their children over the course of this war, these mothers would take up arms against the Locust Horde and become some of the most skilled and venerated warriors to take to the field, as well as some of the most brutal, with some of their tactics even going so far as to endanger the lives of the Serran soldiers themselves. And yet, it wasn't their methods that would prove to be the most destructive out of anything this order could bring to bear, as contained within the halls of this order was none other than a weapon known as the Hammer of the Emperor. A weapon of unknown origin, believed to originate from the Dark Age of technology, this weapon unleashes a brutal and devastating dispersal of holy light, causing the absolute destruction of everything within its wake. Currently, the Serran Guard and the Order of the Grievous Heart continue their war against the Cult of the Locust on the planet of Serra. However, there are rumors of an approaching Tyranid hive fleet, and the horrors it brings could be catastrophic. Luckily for them, the soldiers of Serra are ready. And there we have it, the Serran Planetary Guard and the Order of the Grievous Heart homebrew lore. Feel free to tell me how you thought of my homebrew in the comments section below. We've got our homebrew out of the way, and now we can get started on buying the models necessary to fulfill it. As usual, we'll be starting off with trying to go for the 500 point mark in order to complete this homebrew. So let's see what GW is selling and see what we can use to make this homebrew a reality. For our first purchase, we're going to be looking at the Imperial Guard Combat Patrol. Looking at it briefly, it gives us nothing but infantry, which is really great for this homebrew, but really shitty for anyone else hoping to buy a Lehman Russ. Here's hoping the new Combat Patrol comes with one. GW, I'm just saying. It's kind of a dick move to not put a Lehman Russ inside the Combat Patrol. If you did one for the Start Collecting box, what's stopping you from putting one in now? Huh? Fucking bitches. Doing the math briefly, this Combat Patrol comes up to around 365 points at the time of this recording, and so obviously with that we're going to need to start expanding. However, before we do that, I actually want to look at the models contained within this box and kind of associate them to members we might find within the COG military. So for example, the leader of this regiment, the Warlord, the member of the Cading Command Squad, we could easily have them play the chairman of the COG military, given the fact the COG are led by a chairman who acts as a acting president and elected dictator, for lack of a better word. And we could have the other members of the Cading Command Squad function similar to his bodyguard, the Black Gears that we might find in the COG military, the elite of the elite. That being said, though, there isn't too much to say in regards to the artillery piece and the scout sentinel, since there isn't very much equivalent to that in the COG military or in the Gears of War universe overall, so we can just easily have those play the standard military units they play in the Guard and just roll with it as it is. So, with 365 points and under our belt, we're going to have to make another purchase, which kind of sucks given the fact that the Guard is a horde army, so we're going to have to start building into that and have to spend quite a few dollars in order to actually expand this homebrew. That being said though, for our next models, we're going to be going with the Sisters of Battle, because like I said, this will be a cross homebrew between the Astra Militarum and the Adeptus Sororitas. Now, while we do have a vast number of options, we're not going to be going with the Combat Patrol. Mostly because at the time of this recording, GW shelved it. Good job on that one, GW. Another one of your brilliant schemes that you've been planning. We're going to have to go with a specific model in their unit in order to best fit the theme we're going for when it comes to the Grievous Heart. So after scouring all the models that GW has in their web store that belong to the Sisters of Battle, and best exemplifies the female fighters that we find in the Gears of War universe. And those models are the Retributor Squad. These ones are incredibly brutal and, for lack of a better word, emphasize overkill, which I think best fits, especially with the holier-than-thou feel that we're going for when it comes to these female warriors for this homebrew. So the question now becomes, how many points are the Retributor Squad? And you'd actually be surprised because I'm going to tell you that they come up to a total of 105 points, which is pretty impressive overall, especially for the sisters being a horde army as well. So together with 510 points and the 365 that we have working with, that comes to 470, meaning that we're here, a 500 point army that we can start off that best fits the Saren Guard and the Grievous Heart Sisters Battle Order. And with that, we have our homebrew bought and ready to be built with our lore written. We can build everything we need right now. And with that, I think this is a good end to the video that I've been working with. Thank you for sticking around along the way. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you guys have any comments or recommendations that you would like me to build in this homebrew series, let me know in the comment section below. And if you really enjoyed this video, why don't you take a look at my other videos and maybe do a little crossover episode. Maybe have the Gears from Gears of War fight up against the Terminids from Helldivers. Anyway, without anything left to say, I'll see you next time. Bye.
Stay cool, baby.